Hello there, welcome to Craft with Fee, and welcome to week 11 of the 12 weeks of Christmas stitch along using the gorgeous Maple Farm TILDA fabrics. Today's project, we're going to start off with a little stitchery. So we're going to need a little piece of natural hanky linen. On that, with a pencil, I've drawn a rectangle, and I've written the measurements on the back here so I wouldn't forget to tell you. 4.5 inches by 3 inches, so 4.5 in length by 3 inches in width. And then I've taken the little flower stitchery. So if you bought the kit, you'll have a little line on transfer, and that's what I've used here. And I've transferred it in the top section of that rectangle. And now I'm going to go and pop a tiny little bit of parlan behind it, and then I'm going to stitch it. And then I'll come back. It's all stitched. So I've used 3 colours. These are the colours that we've used in previous stitcheries. So we've got this lovely aqua for the stems, which I've done in chain stitch, back stitch the leaves, and I've done the little flowers in the plummy colour, and then the little stamens in the centre I've done in the mustard. So there you have it. Now I've also chopped it down so that it's on those drawn lines. It's been chopped down. So what we're going to do now is take 2 of these little 1/2 inch hexagon papers. If you bought the kit, you will have those. And we're going to take some of the scrap fabric that we have left over from previous projects. You just need to choose 2. And we are just going to hold the little hexagon paper, and then we're just going to chop around about 1/4 inch all the way around. Now, of course, I'm not fussy cutting this. You can fussy cut it if you want to, but that's entirely up to you. I'm not going to bother. I just want it to look a little bit scrappy, and so it will. So, and when I'm doing my little EPP shapes, this is what I do. I don't necessarily use a template. I just use the card, and I'll sit there and just cut my scraps. There you go. So I like to use the glue stick method, and that's just by using a water-soluble glue. And of course mine has run out. I shall change it and I'll be back. Isn't that always the way? So if you don't know how to change these, let me show you. So you wind it out until you get the glue part off. Let's throw that in the bin. And then you take your refill, which you can purchase from kittyrosecottage.com, and you just wind backwards until it stops winding. Now these glue stick refills fit all different types of glue sticks. This is a sew line. The ones in the Kitty Rose store are a Japanese brand, I think, but the glue sticks fit both of them. So no problem. So what we're going to do is we're just going to glue in a little bit from the edge there, and then we're just going to fold that fabric over. Let me just get it sort of centered. There we go. And then we'll pop the glue on the opposite side, and then we just keep working in opposite sides. So we'll bend that one over there, and then we'll do the opposite side over here. A little bit difficult doing it through the camera. Now you don't want to get that glue too close to the edge, because when you go to stitch them together, even though we're only going to be stitching on one seam because we're only joining 2, you don't want to get glue all over your needle if you can help it. So, and there we have it. A sweet little hexagon. Isn't it adorable? A lovely size, and it's just going to give this little project a bit of an extra bit of embellishment. And then you're using up your scraps at the same time. Now, of course, the hexagon template will be on the pattern sheet along with the stitchery, so you can just print it out, cut out your 2 little hexagons yourself if you don't already have some. So, all good. Got a bit close to the edge there, but anyway, breaking my own rules. Okay, put the lid on that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a bit of needle and thread. So I've got some polyester thread doubled over, and we're just going to put the 2 hexagons like this and then turn them over so that they are on top of each other. Now the best way to hide the knot in the end of your thread is to take your first needle in underneath where the fabric is, so that knot will then hide itself up underneath that seam that you can see there. And then all you do is you whip stitch these together. Now, if you've watched any of my other EPP videos, I like to do a locking knot at the start and the finish. I call it a figure 8 knot, which I'll do there, but I'll show it to you again in a moment, step by step, so that you can see. But I have shown this quite a number of times throughout my videos. So the whip stitch is just getting your needle through both sections of the paper, the fabric, and you can feel the paper in against your needle. You don't go through the paper, you just go through the fabric. And as I said, you can actually feel it there underneath. So what this knot is, it's a figure 8 knot. So you take your thread from the left-hand side and you take it over to the right-hand side, under the needle and back to where you started. Then you do the same with the other side of the thread. So we're going to go around that way and back, and then you pull your needle through and you'll see that it forms a figure 8. See there? It forms a figure 8 knot, and it's a locking stitch. And I like to do that not only at the start and finish of my hexagons or any of the shapes that I'm putting together, but I like to do it halfway along as well, because if for some reason the thread becomes unravelled, it'll only unravel as far as your knot. So that is the clever part. So we'll just trim that off. I've got a little helper down at my feet, haven't I, Marlo? Okay, so we just open this back out now, and you can see that it's been stitched together beautifully. And we're going to actually take the papers out and we're going to sew this onto our fabric. So I have also shown you before how to take the papers out, but I'll show you today again. So we're going to use a hot iron, and I'm going to turn it to steam, and then I'm going to give it a few bursts of steam. Now the reason I'm doing that is because that glue is water soluble and we want it to disappear. Now it won't disappear completely, obviously, but it will, and that's very hot, we'll just leave that for a moment, it will sort of start to dissipate. So all you need to do is to just gently lift your fabric. Now because you've given it that nice shot of steam, you're going to have nice crisp edges, and it'll also, as I said, start to get rid of your glue. And then all you need to do is just to lift out that paper. And you see there, you're left with your beautiful hexagon shape. So just give it another go with the iron, just to make sure that those folds are nice and neat and that they're still folded down nicely. And you can see from the other side there that we still have our hexagon shape. So it's a pretty easy process. I know a lot of people like to baste with thread, and you can do that if you want, but yeah, I prefer to use the glue stick method. It's very quick. And I don't have any trouble taking the papers out when I use this method, so super easy. And now, of course, you can pop these back into your stash because you can reuse them. Isn't that good? There we go. So we have our beautiful little hexagons, and all we need to do is to baste them down here. Now you can use some little applique pins. You can also use Roxanne's glue basted, or you can actually use your glue stick that you used before. Because this is the only thing in front of me, this is what I'm going to use. So we're just going to sort of center them on there like so. And then we're going to baste them down with a blind stitch. Now the stitch we use for that is the same sort of stitch that you use when you're doing binding. And I'll see if I've got enough thread on here to start off. Now you only need it single when you're doing this because you want it to be a hidden stitch. So I'm just going to pop a knot in the end of my thread. And we're going to start off at one of the points of the hexagon there. So we're going to come through the back of the fabric, and we're just going to come up, hopefully you can see that there, I'm coming up right on the point of the hexagon. So we're just catching the fabric slightly. So hopefully you can see that. Oops, I've pulled my knot all the way through, very clever. There we go. And so then we're just going to go back down, directly down below where we came out and then underneath and then back forward of it there, like that. So back down through the back, come forward along the back so that your thread is at the back of the project, and then you can see there, hopefully you can see the blind stitching. So I'll go and finish this and then we'll come back. And there we have those sweet little hexagons that are now stitched down onto our fabric. So the next step is to cut out a piece to go on the back of your little rectangle here. So I've decided to do my lining and my back in the same fabric. I really like this small print, so I've actually cut 3 of these the same. So they are 3 inch by 4.5, so 3 inches in diameter, 4.5 in length. So you'll need to cut 2 for the lining and then 1 for the back. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sew this on all 4 sides, but we're going to leave a small section for turning. So you can decide where you do put the turn. I'm going to put mine here in the side. It's going to be around about 1.5 inches that I leave, and that will leave enough room for it to be turned to the inside. So I'm just going to pin this all together, and then I'm going to do the same with the lining. So it's going to be exactly the same. I'm going to need to turn that as well. So just sew around your 4 sides, leave your gap for turning, and then we'll come back and we'll turn it together. Okay, so I've turned this one to the other side, and I've left the little gap there in the side. I've just given it a little bit of a pressed it down. And I just thought I'd do this one on camera and show you. So we're just going to trim those corners. As normal, pop your fingernail over the stitched corner so that you're protecting it, and then just snip off that little bit of extra fabric. Now, you're not cutting off very much at all, and you might think it doesn't matter, but it does. It'll actually bulk up your corners, and you won't get a nice, neat finish if you don't take the time just to trim those off. So then we'll go to the little gap here in the side, and I think I've left only about 1 inch on this because I didn't mark my fabric. I was naughty. I eyeballed it. So just turn it through. Now, of course, if you're doing, I should have said before, if you're doing a different coloured lining than you're doing a back, the piece that's going to be on the back of this is actually going to be a piece of your lining and not the back. So you would need to put a piece of lining against your back and a piece of lining against your front. I should have clarified that earlier, I'm sorry. But because I'm using the same fabric, that's why I didn't think to tell you. So it might be easier if you use the same fabric, then you won't get confused. Okay, so I've poked those corners out. We're now just going to get our little hot iron. A few people have asked me about this iron. It's called a Also Pro. It's got an iTouch mechanism, so when I take my hand off the handle, it lifts itself up. It's very clever. Very, very clever. Okay, so that one has pushed itself in a little bit further than I would like. I'm just going to poke out those edges there. I haven't got them right on the seam line. There we go, that's a bit straighter. Okay. So now you've got your 2 pieces like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop one on top of the other. All a bit strange, isn't it? Now my clips aren't close by, but I'll have to use a... Hang on a sec. If you were to see my craft room at the moment, you would understand I have absolutely no idea where anything is. It is bedlam. Okay, so this is the top. So we're going to pop a clip on that corner, and we're going to pop a clip on that corner. Now, we are also going to pop a clip on the bottom corners. Okay, so now we're going to get a needle and thread. Now you can decide whether or not you're going to be using a decorative thread, as in an embroidery cotton here, or whether or not you're going to be using a polyester thread that's sort of invisible. That's up to you. But what we're going to do is we're going to whip stitch this all the way around. So we're going to go all the way up the 2 long sides, and we're going to go across the top, but we're actually going to stop in the middle and we're going to leave a gap. And the gap is going to be a healthy 1/4 inch. So around about that amount there you can see. And we're going to leave that in the center. Now, if you feel that you need to mark it, you can mark it there now with a water-soluble pen. That's up to you. Or you can eyeball it. So you would stop stitching at that mark there, and then you would start stitching over here again and leaving that gap in the top. And that is because we're going to be pulling a piece of ribbon through that. So we're going to stitch all the way up there across the top, and we're going to stop, and then we're going to start again over here and then go all the way down this side here. So I'll go off and do that, and then I'll come back. So it's all stitched now. So we've done the hand stitching down the sides. We've left a little gap in the top. Let me get my scissors and just poke it through so that you can see. There you go. So that's the gap that I've left there in the top. And that's for the piece of ribbon to use for the slider that we're going to be making. So now you have a little cover. So this will be the cover of our little sliding needle book. So isn't that sweet? It's just adorable. So what we're going to do is go on to the next stage. So we're going to just pop down a mat because I'm not going to move from my ironing table. And the reason for that mostly is because of the mess that I have. Okay, we're going to get 2 pieces of cereal cardboard, weight cardboard. So I've got these 2 pieces here. Now these measure 2 inches in width by 3.5. I'll just check that. I'm pretty sure that's what I cut them at. So yes, 3.5 in length. So the idea for this is that it needs to fit inside. So if you want to do a double check, you can just check to make sure that it's going to slide in and out of your cover quite freely. Now remember, you're going to be putting a little bit of fabric over the edge of that, so you've got to allow for that, but you can see here that I've got quite a bit of room there. Yes, Marlo, he wants to help. Okay, so we're going to get a couple of pieces of wadding and we're going to glue them on to the cardboard. So we'll get our cardboard here and we'll spread it out. We've got craft glue that we're using, and I'm just using a artist plastic spatula just to spread it out so I don't get it all over my fingers. Now I've made the wadding a little bit bigger so that I can trim it down once it's dry. Okay, so I've given it a couple of minutes to dry. You could probably give it a bit longer than that, but for the purpose of the video, I just want it to go off a little bit. And then we're going to trim the wadding back to the card. Okay. So this is where your scrap wadding comes in. Never throw away those little pieces because they're very handy. You can even use parlan. If you've got little bits of parlan, you could glue that on as well. The wadding doesn't need to be very thick. It just needs to give it a little bit of body. So we'll just get rid of those. Okay, so now you need to choose a fabric that you're going to cover these in, and I am going to be using the pink because it's the other colour that I've used on my hexagon. But use whatever you've got from the range. It doesn't need to be too specific. And we're just going to cut it so that the fabric is about 1/2 inch on all the sides wider. So cut there like that, and of course this little piece here can then go in my scrap bin because that'll fit a hexagon, a tiny hexagon. So now I'm going to be using my paper tape runner that I've used in the past. You can use the glue that we've just used, the craft glue, if you wish. It's up to you. Okay, so we're going to do it so the wadding is facing down onto the fabric, and then we're going to hold it and we're going to actually cut off the bulk of those corners. So we're not going right into the corner, we're just cutting off that little bit there just so that we've got a bit of bulk gone. We don't want too much bulk. Okay. So we're just going to do the one piece to begin with because the other piece is going to need to have a couple of extras put onto it. So we're just going to run the glue runner down there and then we're just going to press that down, just like that. Now do opposite sides and make sure you've got your tension right so that you've got it nice and taut all the way through there. And then I'm just going to fold that over there like so. And then we'll do the exact same thing with the sides. So now when you get to the corners, make sure that you pinch it in the corner there so you've got a nice right angled edge. And you can see there on the other side that it's beautiful and neat. That's because you've taken the time to lay that corner down. Do the same here. So you actually need to pull it out first. Pull it out and stretch that corner. And then come back in and fold it down into the corner. So that doesn't matter how it looks on this side. It's what's on the other side that matters. So there we go. So you can see there I have a bit of a bulge, and that's because the fabric is not tight enough. Now the beauty of this running tape is that you can pick it up and you can redo it. Now if you've got too much bulk there coming over the edge, you can trim that little bit, but make sure that you don't trim it in too far. In actual fact, I've been able to fold it in, but otherwise you'll end up with a messy corner, and of course we don't want that. So I'm going to go and finish this one off, and I'm then going to do this one, but I'm going to leave this side open, and then we're going to pop on a piece of felt as well. Okay, so this one's finished, and this one is at the point where we've just got one side left. Now, at this point, you can pop a little bit of stuffing in there if you want to. If you want to turn this side into a little bit of a pin cushion. The wadding might be enough for you. You might decide that that's enough. I am going to pop a little bit in there. Just going to spread it out sort of so that it's sort of got that little bit of a bulge. And we can use it as a bit of a pin cushion if we want to. Okay, so then we'll just pop our glue runner on. And then we'll pull it down tight, make sure we get those corners nice and neat. It is certainly much easier to use these glue runners than it is to be using the wet glue because you don't get it all over your fingers. That's the advantage. And there you go. So you can see that we've just got that little bit of a bulge there happening, which is going to be what I'm going to be using for a pin cushion. Now, if you're using a directional fabric, make sure that you've got it up the right way, this piece. So what I've done here is I've taken a piece of felt and I've cut it down to about 1 3/4 inches square. Now I've done that with my beautiful little pinking blade on my cutter. So that is them here. So you can just use it on your rotary cutter blade, and you get the pretty edges. Now you can stitch that down if you want. You can pop something decorative on it to make it look good. But I'm just going to run some glue along the top because I'm just going to have the top part of that glued down. Now don't put too much glue because it will spill out, and be very gentle pressing it down. And I can see there that I've got a tiny, tiny bit coming off the top. So I do have some tissue here ready. There we go. So we just can then pull it back up a little bit to cover up any, because that will actually stain the fabric, so we don't want it to do that. Okay, so that still pops up, and underneath there we've got that little bit of wadding, which will give us that additional little pin cushion. So what we need to do now is to take a piece of our seam binding or our ribbon, and we're going to find the halfway point on a piece that measures around about 12 inches, so around about the 6-inch mark. Now we're only doing that so that we get it nice and even. So we're going to run some glue. So we've got the other piece which doesn't have the felt on it, and we're going to run some glue just through the middle there, just a little bit. Don't go too close to the edges because we don't want to have it spilling out. Find your halfway point and then eyeball it and put that halfway point at about halfway on your card. Now you can use a lined mat like I am to line up to make sure that you've got your ribbon on your card sitting straight. And as you can see, that's there now come through the ribbon, so that's why it's important that you don't use too much of it. So now you can pop a dab of that ribbon, glue, losing my words again today, just on the four corners, a little bit on the sides. We don't want to go too close to the edge because now we're going to mash these two together. So we're going to lay one on top of the other, like that. And at this point you'll be able to see whether or not you've got your ribbon in sort of around about the right spot. Oops. There we go. Now all these little bits here on the corners that are now poking out, you can poke those back in as you're sewing. But we're going to clip these and get it to dry, so it's going to need to sit for a little bit, depending on the type of glue that you're using. So I'll use my scissors in a minute and poke those little bits in. So as we've done in the past with a lot of the bits that we have been making using cardboard, we're then going to whip stitch the pieces together. That is the plan. So we're just going to leave it to dry to begin with. Just let it sit and do its thing, and then we'll come back and I'll whip stitch it, and then we'll come back and put it all together. Okay, before it's too late, I've just come back with a little correction because I forgot that I had to make allowances for the bead to go on the top of this and for it to slide right up. So I've actually made this at about 20 inches instead of the 12 that I originally said. So before you get too further down the track, just do that. So I'm just going to clip mine back together now. Obviously, I realised my mistake before it was too late. Fantastic. So I'm just going to reclip it now, and you might notice I've applied a little flower there on the top. I thought that was a nice little touch, so I'll just wait till this dries and then we'll come back and, as I said, we'll put it all together. Okay, so there we have it. So you can see there that I've sewn all the way around the edges and it looks great. So the ribbon's poking out the bottom and through the top. So then you just need to get that piece of ribbon and thread it through your outer piece so it comes out that hole that you've left there. Okay. And then we're going to take a bead. Now, if you bought the kit from Kitty Rose, you'll have some little beads in there. A couple of selections of colours. And you just need to roll the seam binding so that it's got a pointy end on it. And you can start to poke it through your bead. Now, it will go through. You've just got to persevere there a bit. You can see here that I've popped a bead on the end. So, proof that it does happen. But I'll just do it off camera and then I can sit down and do it. At the moment I'm standing up and I can't actually see it. Okay, so I've got the bead on. Now I'm not going to knot these on yet. We just need to decide where we're going to put them. So you need to have enough ribbon at the top and the bottom. Well, the bottom is really just a decorative one. So we could just maybe do a knot in the bottom there. There we go. I think that one looks okay. I'll chop that off. But at the top there, we need to be able to have enough so that the case comes off your little needle book there. Okay, so because this you're using to pull it out, and this one you're using to pull it back in. So we're going to be pulling it in like that. And that's how it will look when it's closed. So we'll open it back out so that the cover comes completely off, and so that is probably around about there is where we want our ribbon, I think. Just give it a little bit more for good measure. But you can play around with the ribbon length. That's entirely up to you as to what you decide on. And there we go. So this is our beautiful little needle book. So as I said, you can use the pull to pull the little case back down over the top. There we go. And that just pulls up like that. And then, of course, you can pull the one at the bottom to pull your little needlebook out. So there you have it, my little sliding hideaway needlebook with the gorgeous Maple Farm fabrics, and yeah, it would make a beautiful gift for a sewing friend. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's little tutorial. It is a little bit of a fiddly project. It does take a little bit of time, but the end result is just divine. I absolutely love it. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, you know what to do. Click on the subscribe button, press the little bell, and then you'll get a notification every time I upload a new video. And I will see you next week with our final one in the Maple Farm Stitch Along. Bye for now.